Michael, thank you for joining us for another edition of our CISO Spotlight series for my Cyber Intelligence Weekly newsletter. As you know, I've been meeting with other cyber leaders and hearing a lot about their journey, their story, and learning a lot about leadership and cyber and what makes cyber leaders tick. So really appreciate you joining me on this today, and I'm very excited to dive in. So with that, maybe we could start off with just kind of a simple one. Why don't you give us name, rank, where you work now, and maybe a quick background in history.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me this morning, Dan. It's great to see you again. So I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO for Dick's Sporting Goods. My name is Michael South. I've been in, tech and cyber for, I think, around 30 years. Started off in the Navy and avionics, moved into IT, did several different jobs. We may talk about that later. When I retired from the Navy in 2016, a small stint as a deputy CISO for the city of DC. Went to big tech with AWS and IBM, and then now I'm here in retail and enjoying this amazing company that I'm at now.
You've had a lot of stops along the way in your career. I also noticed that you were an entrepreneur at one point and had a coffee shop.
Yes, my wife and I started it was like a licensed version of Pike's Perk Coffee and Tea Cafe in Colorado Springs. So I was stationed at Peterson Air Force Base when I was in the Navy.
Yep.
At a joint command. It was, interestingly enough, at the time, I was in charge of managing satellites in space, the communication satellites. So even I was IT, I was actually managing satellites. I was worrying about space weather and orbits and things like that. And only part-time with the communications actually coming down, supporting the military forces across the globe. But I guess that wasn't enough. So my wife and I decided to open up a coffee shop in the local area. Surprisingly did well. We took best local salad and number 3 best cafe in the city our first year of business. So yeah, it was a very stressful and amazing experience. I don't think I would do it again, but it definitely has some good memories.
What a fun experience. And as I was prepping for the call, I didn't realize that you were an entrepreneur at one point. That's never come out before. So that's really fun, really cool. In your career, Michael, when did you feel really just more drawn into cybersecurity, and how did that kind of occur for you?
Yeah, I think, for some people, it is like a single defining moment. For me, I feel like it was more like breadcrumbs throughout my career. I remember managing the first Windows NT 4.0 domain for the Navy in San Diego, California,
Wow.
when the Melissa virus hit in 1999, and going through all of that. So that's the virus that kind of just kept emailing your contacts list. It took down Exchange servers or email servers all over the globe. And I remember that was the first, I would say, cybersecurity incident that I was a part of. And then over my career, primarily in somewhere, shape, or form tech, I just kind of gravitated. I enjoyed the investigatorial aspect of it. I enjoyed kind of like the thrill of, I just beat them back. And I would almost say it kind of paralleled my military career because, whether it's a cyber event or some real world event, something happens and we go in to respond. And it could be anything from a tsunami that hits, in Thailand or in Japan, and we go in as a humanitarian effort, or whether there's some armed conflict somewhere. So between cyber and my military career, there's always a kind of this parallel between something bad happens, we go in to try to remediate that and help and defend, whatever the case may be. And then so it just seemed like a natural fit. And so over the course of my career, that kept coming, they kept going down this parallel path until 2011 was when I actually had my first full-time cybersecurity role. And that's when I managed cybersecurity for the Navy in Asia and the Pacific when I was part of the US 7 Fleet. And I think that's when I decided that I actually like this enough to I want to do this full time from here on out.
Was there something that helped you get that opportunity, or is that an opportunity that just kind of came up more naturally and you felt like you were a great fit for it?
I think there's a couple different aspects of it. The way I kind of look at my career is I almost feel like my career has been narrated by Bob Ross, the painter, with a bunch
Okay.
of happy little accidents that happened at the right moment that just kept leading me to new opportunities and things like that. So um, at that particular point, a couple of things that happened. I was current before that. I was the operations officer for the Navy communications and station in Naples, Italy, and so we manage all the telecommunications and networks and for the Navy in Europe. And we had built the first
Yep.
security operations center overseas in Naples,
Oh,
and
wow.
that I think got me into certain aspects of the cybersecurity more of an operational rather than from an IT perspective where I just respond to something that happened to me. This is where we built at the first SOC. We were kind of taking a more of a lead, and this was the first SOC overseas. Obviously, we had them in the U.S. Um, and so that was kind of what stimulated some of that. And then from there, it was also just to have the happenstance of how the Navy billeting system works as an officer. There's only so many roles that we can do at particular ranks, and there were a couple different that were available to me, and we were interested in going to Japan, and so I put in for it, and it happened that I was selected, so it worked out pretty well.
Wow. Um, did it feel more high stakes when you were responsible for cyber versus IT, or did it feel kind of business as usual to you?
That's a good question. I don't think I've felt that much of a difference other than I would say maybe I had more control. Like
Sure.
in IT, I mean, you're doing everything you can. Hopefully, you're managing vulnerabilities, but like you're doing everything you can to defend yourself, and you're just waiting for something to happen, and then somebody else will kind of come in and tell you how to respond, right?
Sure.
This is where I felt I was able to get a little bit more proactive. Like take the things that I learned from the IT perspective, understanding the military operations, and then get a little bit more proactive. And hey, these are where we see specific risks, and how do we go about managing those risks in advance. So, for example, um, in Seventh Fleet, so all of Asia and Pacific, one of the big military risks is from a loss of satellite communications
Hmm.
or anything like that, because some of our near peer competitors have the ability to restrict or deny or degrade our satellite communications abilities. And so one of the things we did is we built out a concept of operations, or ConOps, of how would the Navy operate without all of the satellite communications that we had gotten really used to, right? It's almost like
Business
how do we go
continuity.
back? Exactly. How much are we going to go back to World War II days, right? So exactly from business continuity, right? Um, so how do we go and figure that out? And so we actually developed a ConOps for that. So we spent about 6 to 9 months developing that, and then we actually exercised it. We did a military exercise where we took down a lot of the Navy in Asia for a couple days, and everybody had to exercise that plan. Like, how would they still operate without it? And it was an amazing lesson learned. And there were, um, uh, military think tanks and technology experts from all over the place had come in to really watch this play out, so we can bring that back in and actually help develop new Navy tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, for how the Navy would operate in such an environment. And you look at something like that, and you say, well, it's not necessarily the traditional cyber, right? If you
Right.
think of like hacking and things like that. But when you look at from a risk perspective and the CIA triad, it really helped address the availability aspect of it, right?
Yep.
And so that's probably one of the things I'm probably most proud of on the cyber side that I've been a part of, to really help kind of lead that effort.
Yeah. And you said it while I was thinking it, the CIA triad, right? It's funny that we're talking about this in this conversation led here, but it's the A in that triad is a lot of times overlooked. It's not the
Yep.
sexy thing that gets talked about in the headlines, right? But it is uniquely a part of cyber warrior's job to think about that availability and make those plans. And that's really cool that you got to do some things kind of really on the leading edge to help our folks on the front lines out there serving. So
Absolutely.
that's amazing stuff. Um, it we always talk about security leaders having to evolve a lot faster than the organizations they serve. They have to evolve to keep up with the threat actors. Um, can you pinpoint any times in your career where maybe uh, the rules you learned had to change, or your leadership style had to change, or you had to come at things a little bit differently? The story you just shared is a great example of that. But is there anything else that you could call upon that makes you think about how you as a security leader has to have to evolve much more quickly than everybody else?
Yeah, I think the one of those particular defining moments is when I first went to the city of DC. Um, Coming from the operational Navy, and so this was 2016 when I went to DC. Coming from the operational Navy, we didn't really use cloud, right? To me, cloud was my personal Dropbox account, right?
Sure.
And so I go to the city of DC, and we are starting to move to the cloud quite a bit. We're moving to Office 365. We are deploying the DC Healthcare Exchange into AWS. We're going to a hybrid environment with Microsoft Azure between our data centers. And I walked in there. Now, granted, I spent 25 years in the Navy, so I had a pretty confined experience base and perspective, right?
Hmm.
And I walked in and I looked at the amount of compliance, just from the compliance perspective that the city would have to meet, from IRS 275 to HIPAA to FERPA to, I mean, you name it, it's out there. The city has to comply with it. And the very first thing I thought about was, you've got to be kidding me. Like, we are going to lose control of everything. We don't have the servers or the data in our data centers. We have the control over anything. I have no idea what's going on. Like, this is an absolute, we cannot do this. Now, I had gone on that journey from in my military career from being the Department of No to the Department of Yes, but to the
Right.
Department of Yes and is kind of like a polite way of saying but. Um, and so I also focus on, like, if I'm going to say no, because the one thing in the military, it's all about mission, right? You've got to get the mission done. While security is an absolute in the military, at the end of the day, if security gets in the way of getting the mission done, right, there's going to be that risk is going to be accepted, and they're going to go after the mission. So
Right.
when I look at that, I'm like, okay, well, the city government has a mission, and if I'm going to say no to something, I'm going to have the data to back it up. So my instinct was absolutely not at all. I was terrified, not going to happen. I said, let me go figure out this cloud thing so I can get all the data and support my no. I went and started learning what the cloud really was. And because I came from that IT background, I'd managed networks and data centers before, I quickly came to realize the value of the cloud. And I started to realize, oh my God, like, this can resolve so many challenges we had on the infrastructure side for so many years. You look at multi-AZ or multi-region resiliency built in, the auto failover, self-healing, all these different aspects of it. And that's when I'm like, oh, I'm completely wrong. We not only should support, we should make this a priority. At the time, the city had started the cloud adoption strategy, and it kind of fizzled out. It was like a couple page, somebody had started it. I came back, picked that up, did the research. At the time, it was cloud first, which I think a lot of people realize maybe not necessarily is the most appropriate. It's more of like a cloud appropriate. But
Right.
I picked that up, and from a security role, we actually led the development of the cloud adoption strategy for the city. Like, when do you ever see security leading, like, a transformative effort in any particular organization? And so that's, to me, was a time when one is, it kind of reinforced the fact that I could absolutely be wrong. I need to, instead of going after to get the data to support my decision, I need to be more open-minded and just go learn it first. Try to not have such a closed mind going into it. And I think from there, that, and then my follow-on role with AWS, because once I did that, that put me on the radar for Microsoft and AWS. Ended up going to AWS and had amazing cybersecurity leaders there, like Stephen Schmidt and CJ Moses and others. And it kind of put me into, now we're in the mode of security as the department of enablement.
Right.
Right. And really, how can we support the business to its fullest extent with, instead of locking things down, but with guardrails?
Sure.
Right. It's kind of like the highway guardrails. So they can go as fast as they need to, but there's at least some level of protection measures in place to keep them safe. And it's not just locked down and movable and restrictive. And I think that was kind of, between those two experiences, is kind of what got to me with a different mindset for how I manage or I lead today.
That's a fantastic story. I mean, I think that highlights so many things. Security being a leader, out on the edge, right? Taking new paradigms and showing how they can work. If you do it the right way, like you said, put the guardrails in place. I've known a lot of organizations that you put off, cloud totally for a long time because of the unknown in the security concerns and sort of this like gray cloud that they just didn't take the time to learn, right? And I think so much of security is what you articulated. It is being unafraid and unabashed, learning, and going out there, figuring it out, maybe not being afraid to fail a little bit, but also knowing that, like, hey, there's massive tailwinds behind this like cloud thing. We should probably learn this and figure it out and not be the last ones to adopt it. And if you could get over those security hurdles like you did and figured that out, it could lead to major transformation and success. And hybrid cloud is all the strategy today, right? And it's working out successfully for a lot of folks. When there's no cloud outages, knock on wood, they are prone to their own problems, just like any other infrastructure is, right? Nothing's perfect. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And now it's AI is today, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing. And we can either sit back and say no, and this is huge risk and get in the way, or we can learn it. We can figure out how we can, minimize that risk to support the business and really be that enabler. I mean, that's really the two choices we have today in security. Either you're the inhibitor or you're the enabler. And if you're the inhibitor, you're probably not going to last long.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Well, with that, Michael, in your career path, if you had to pick like a professional scar or like a learning moment, like if you could be brave enough to share a time when you failed, but it taught you something fantastic. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
That's a tough question. So the way I look at my career, I don't know how many people say this. I always felt like I've failed more than I've succeeded, but I've made my successes count and I've learned from my failures. And so there's probably a lot of those that I could cover. When I think of scarring, though, there is one time when I think about scarring that from a particular job that I had. I'd say it's less about failing, but it's about working with different people and say a boss, a manager who has a different perspective than you,
Sure.
and then what came of that. So if I can share that.
Absolutely.
This was also when I was in 7th Fleet. So I had a manager at the time, a Navy captain, and she was amazing. She was also a perfectionist, but she was probably one of the most remarkable senior leaders that I've ever seen or worked for. Technically deep, supported the admiral amazingly, but she was also pretty difficult to work for. And so we worked together for a period of 2 years. The first year, it can be very challenging, because if you brought her anything, any type of product, or did anything, it was always about why that last 2% wasn't good, right? And so you start to self doubt, or develop self doubt. You start to wonder, like, what's going on. You're like, man, what does she want? Like, and you start to doubt yourself. You start to get really frustrated. You start to feel like the victim. Like, man, like, she's got it out for me, right?
Sure.
And it took me about a year to build up the courage to kind of confront her on it. And I asked for some time. We sat down, and I told her, I said, like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I feel. Like, what's going on? Like, am I not cutting it? Like, what do I need to do?
Yeah, I can see how
And it
you feel
was,
that way, right?
yeah. And it was a very interesting. And so that's where the scarring, that first year is kind of where the scarring came in, right? But the conversation was incredible, but also very humbling. And she shared with me at the time that she's pretty good at assessing talent. And she said there's certain people that she can see, they're at the peak of their career. They're not growing anymore. They're not going anywhere. Like, whatever they give her is the best that they can do. And that was it.
Sure.
And she had to accept that. She also shared with me at the time that she saw a lot of potential in me. And she was going to make it her mission to pull that potential out of me, kicking and screaming if necessary. Um, and I think that really changed things for me, because in my mind, I went from being the victim, like, oh, she's got it out for me. Like, she doesn't like me. I'm failing. Like, this is, like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I've been successful up to this point. Why am I failing now? To, no, I'm not failing. I'm doing well, but she expects a higher bar from me than she does others. And now it's an opportunity for me to actually try to work towards that and achieve that next level. And so I think
Yeah,
that
it sounds
was,
like
sorry, go ahead.
that's a amazing story. I mean, it sounds like she had a very high standard of excellence, right? And those high bars are tough to meet, but I think eventually, through repetition and through learning, and it sounds like, she had radical candor and was
Yep.
willing to have a great conversation with you about it that, taught you a lot, um, which in turn seems like it raised your standard of excellence and your own internal um, thoughts about what's possible from you. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I think not only do we learn the most from our failures, but we also learn the most when we are in the most uncomfortable situations, where
Totally.
we really have to push. And there were twice in my career that, and actually, I think I'm kind of in my third phase now. This was the first time in my career where I was really pushed well beyond what I thought I was at or could do, or what
Sure.
I saw around me. The second time was at AWS, where I constantly felt like the dumbest person in the room, and I knew I had to learn, because I was still a cloud neophyte, right? Even though I had learned some stuff and got somewhat familiar,
Yeah.
going into AWS was also extremely humbling. But they were always there supporting me. And you could ask anybody any question, and they would dump on you everything, all the knowledge that they had. Although there was an expectation that you then had to help them in that, but carry that knowledge forward. And
Right.
actually, now here at Dick's Sporting Goods, our CTO is amazing, and he has very high expectations and standards. And he calls himself an optimizer, and he's constantly pushing. Um, and my peers are just remarkable as well. And I think I'm in my third role, where I'm finding that I've got to elevate myself again, to meet their expectations and succeed, which is a great place to be.
Absolutely. I mean, Vlad is a tremendous person, and I think you want to be surrounded by people like that. I know I do as well. I want to be surrounded by people who push me and make me better and raise my own, personal standard of excellence. So
Exactly. I
that
always tell
that's
people, if I'm the
fantastic.
smartest person in the room, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I know. I always say I'm lucky I founded this company because I don't think I'd be able to get a job here now otherwise. So
Yep,
and I want to keep it that way, right?
exactly.
Like so, and that's my goal. Um, so shifting gears just a tiny bit into a little bit of the current cyber landscape. There's a couple interesting ones in here I'd love to get your take on. Um, I've been asking a lot of cyber leaders what's one of their most overhyped risks that security teams are working on. Like where do you feel like that might exist in the security world today? Not necessarily, with you or your team, but what's something that you're maybe hearing a lot about that's maybe a bit too overhyped and people are spinning their wheels a bit too much on?
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with AI, but that's not what I think is overhyped. I'm going to touch on AI because it is at such a high hype level today. But
Sure.
actually, you think that one is where it needs to be. The challenge is that we don't have it figured out yet. And there's
Yep.
also a lot of FUD out there. There's also, every marketing team in the world now has the word AI in it or AI powered or something like that. So I do think AI is where it needs to be. We just have a lot to figure out in that area. Where I do think it's overhyped, and again, I'll admit, like I don't know everything there is to know within the cybersecurity space. What I do know, I feel the post quantum encryption is overhyped for most people to worry about. In
Hmm.
my view, the tech companies have to go solve this because this is not something that the average business is going to have to worry about, right?
Right.
All of the products that we use, whether it be, a Palo Alto network router, whether it be, um, a code library, whatever it may be, somebody else is going to have to figure that out. We just have to be ready to update, upgrade, you know, as necessary across our ecosystem when it comes, right?
Yep.
I on the code library, I think that's going to be the where we have some work for those who build. So if you have to go to TLS 1.3 to TLS 2.0, whatever it's going to be when this comes out. But I think that's really what we are going to have to focus on. And so all of this effort about, hey, post quantum encryption is going to break the current algorithms, and we got to worry about this today. I don't think this is something the average business needs to worry about today.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of with you there, right? The large technology providers, the OEMs, they're working on, big solutions. They're the ones that make the cloud infrastructure that we all
Exactly.
rely on go, right? Yeah, the ultimate sort of end user impact is really going to be down to, like I think you said, you might have to change the way that you build some systems or architect things, um, but yeah, worst case, it's probably going to be implementing, changes that the infrastructure makers and suppliers show you, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they just NIST just selected, was it 3 algorithms? Was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah, something like
And
that. Yep.
they're still working through that, so it's
Yep.
going to be a little while.
Um, Switching over to security teams, we all know that uh, our security teams are often in a asymmetrical fight every day with the adversaries. Um, and if you've got a good security team, you've got people who genuinely care. And when your people genuinely care, it's hard for them to shut it off.
Hmm.
How do you protect your folks from working too hard or, dare I say the B word, burnout? What are some great strategies as a cyber leader to make sure your team stays on top of their game, but also feeling refreshed and feeling like a human?
Yeah. I think that's tough, and I think there are several things that can be done. I can share some of the things that I do and what I think can be done. Um,
Sure.
let's start with the day to day way you work and communicate. We are 24/7, but that doesn't mean we need to be sending emails and messages 24/7. Um, there are a lot of people who send an email or message at 10 o'clock at night for something that is not urgent. It's not an incident, nothing going on. It's something that's for tomorrow. Um, now that email services and messaging services, you can generally send a timed, schedule to send. Use that, leverage that. Do not bombard people after hours and on weekends with things that are not urgent. Simple things like that can make a big difference. And especially if it's on a big email and everybody's hitting reply all nonstop, right? You're just
Right.
draining it. I also think that when you look at like our mode of operations or our schedules, first of all, to realize that not all cyber risks are equal. We don't need to treat every new vulnerability as a 5 alarm fire.
Yep.
I've been at organizations where, maybe a new critical vulnerability comes out on say it's a Tuesday for some reason. And they know it's coming. It comes out on Tuesday. And then all of a sudden on Friday, they make the decision that everybody needs to work over the weekend to remediate that vulnerability. And oh, by the way, there's no actual exploit out there for it. It's not actually being seen in the wild. Like those type of things. Yes, like I get it. I would love to maximize the protection of our company like no other, right? But
Sure.
when you look at managing risks and what's the the ROI on that, you're just generating burnout for something that's not an actual risk. Now, yes,
Yep.
if it's a critical vulnerability, there's an exploit, we're seeing it in the wild, like WannaCry was, spreading across the globe rapidly, that's different, right? But and so those things like that, just how do we get in our normal routines and how do we be thoughtful? And so I think the key word for me is empathetic. If you look at my tagline, so I've shared this in my last role and this role, my tagline is data-driven, risk-informed security with empathy. Understanding the burden we are placing on people, trying to make security as easy as possible for everybody else. How do we make sure that when we do go with the hard ask, it's not just oh my God, again, like you guys are killing me. How do we make it so that when we actually come with the hard ask, they're ready there to support us because they know how much we're doing for them, right? And we
Yeah.
understand and respect everything that they've got going on. A lot of times, like you look at vulnerability management, it's a negotiation. It's not a vulnerabilities will always be your number one priority. Where do they fit in your backlog stack, right? It's a negotiation, understanding the
Love
risk.
that. Yep.
And the last thing is I think it's critical to just bring people together to have fun, to collaborate, to build trust. If you can do it in person, that's fantastic. If you need to do it virtually, everything from virtual happy hours to like a manager's offsite or a team offsite or whatever it may be. I hold between 1 or 2 domain summits a year, and the first day is nothing about work. Last April, I brought in an agile coach, and she helped the team understand like agile methodology, but in a fun way. How to we did like your land, my land, and every team had to kind of help explain their particular world and challenges in it. So all the teams got to understand each other better. You would think in a small security team, everybody kind of knows what everybody does. Surprisingly, they don't.
Yeah.
They day in, day
Yeah.
out, they work their particular area. They may not always have full appreciation for their teams. So when you can bring the teams together and really focus on like personal growth or agnostic professional growth, right?
Yep.
Outside of cybersecurity, those things can really make a difference. And when you build that trust then turns into so much more across the team.
I love that. I mean, you hit on so many of my personal philosophies that I like to believe in. I mean, one is, really the risk informed part of the security bit that you said. Um, you know, th- there's a reason why risk comes before cybersecurity in the name of my business,
Mhm.
right? Like Echelon Risk plus cyber. People are it's like, why isn't it just like Echelon Cybersecurity? And I'm like, well, cybersecurity doesn't matter unless like there's actual risk there. And I think it's so important what you said. You could really help prevent people from running a constant marathon by having them think in the risk context.
Yep.
Um, if there's little impact or maybe even if there's a potential big impact, but the probability is so low, you know, it doesn't have to be a five alarm fire every time, right?
Exactly.
And I love that. So between that and also like finding space to have fun, you that is deeply resonant with me as well. Our one of our core values is more cowbell. So um, we spend more time working together than we do with our families at times, right? And if you're going to do that, you better be darn sure you like the people you work with and you can have a little fun with them.
Exactly.
So I love that
And
philosophy,
I will
man.
say, like, I sometimes that can be a challenge for me because I don't know, over the years. Sometimes, like, as soon as I get on a call, I whatever's in my mind, like we're talking about work, I want to talk about that. Or I'm sure everybody sent it. You send off an email or message, and then afterward you're like, "Oh, by the way, happy Monday. How was your weekend?" Right?
Yeah,
I had an amazing. Well, he was a chief of staff for me in my last role, and we moved him into more of a business ops role to kind of
got it.
help keep the glue together for the whole org. And we had created squads where one, he was always helping me, remind me. He kept keeping me on tap for, hey, we got this. Hey, do you want to send anything for Father's Day coming up? Hey, do you want to do this? Keeping that at front of mind for me, which is fantastic. But we also had these squads. We had an onboarding squad, an experience squad, and a professional development squad. And what we did is we empowered different teammates, across the board, regardless of level or seniority,
Yep,
to
yep,
come together and put together um, activities to for different areas. So if it's an onboarding, they would come and help somebody who just joined the team and onboard. The experience squad was all about having fun, whether it be like a virtual happy hour, whether it be a virtual like game day thing that we did for an hour. And then
that's
the
cool.
professional development was all about how do we bring the people together and kind of build out like what these career roadmaps could look like. How do we enable people to grow in things outside of just the normal work? And so I brought that here too, where yes, I can do all of that, but I think it's much more valuable when we empower the whole team and these different people to take on kind of like these, I would say, leadership responsibilities to help the rest of the team.
Yes. Yeah, it gives people, I think a deeper sense of meaning in their work, a deeper responsibility. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thinking about potential teammates down the line and maybe some younger cyber professionals that are up and coming, that look up and say, "Hey, every day they wake up and they want to be a CISO, right?
Mm.
That's their goal, that's their dream." Um, what are some misconceptions that you would like to set uh, the record straight on that younger cyber professionals might have about what it takes to be a CISO or what the day-to-day of being a CISO is actually really
Mm.
like?
Yeah. Uh, the very first thing that I would offer is um, you can have something in mind for what you want out of your career. And if you achieve that, hey, that's fantastic. But also don't be afraid to try new things or walk into other doors that open. Um, I will tell you, I didn't think 30 years ago that I would be here where I'm at today. Like,
Right.
so when I go back and my life has been narrated by Bob Ross with happy little accidents, different times in my life, different doors open and different doors close. And I think taking the right opportunity at the right time, you can find yourself somewhere completely different. You may find yourself as a CISO if that's what you want, but maybe a different
Sure.
path. But be open to your side journeys or your side quests, if you will. Um, but the other thing is, so when you look at like a CISO for like misconception of a CISO, one is we're not experts in all things cyber. I come from a pretty technical background, from avionics, repairing
Yeah.
electronic systems on aircraft, to IT, network engineering. I've done just about everything in IT except for code. Yes, I took some programming classes in college, but last thing you want me to do is actually code anything. Well, maybe we have vibe coding now. Maybe I can actually finally build an application these
Absolutely.
days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could finally do that. Yeah,
the
yeah. Or
Claude or
pretend to do it well. Yeah.
yeah. But even today, like, God forbid if they give me the ability to push buttons and actually be an administrator or anything.
Sure.
What really matters is understanding kind of their systems thinking across. Like just how understanding how things plug in and looking from a less technical, like how do you push this button and what do you do here, but how do the capabilities come together to fulfill your vision and manage risks across everything. So we're not experts in everything. Just we have to have that big view picture. And it has to align to the business. We are not an isolated entity where like I get to do whatever I want to do from a cybersecurity perspective because that's the most secure thing to do. My role is to manage cyber risks on behalf of the company and inform company leadership of these risks so they can make risk-informed decisions. Okay. Oftentimes, security organizations can be a bubble where the CISO is trying to manage everything within that particular organization, and the business doesn't even have great insight into what those cyber risks are. And they may be making decisions or priorities that are not related or counter to what the CISO is doing. And so understanding that this role is as much about being a business leader as being a cybersecurity leader, and if not more important, right? Because you're going to have directors or people who are going to be, again, more technical than you, hopefully, at this point in time in your career, to kind of help manage that and kind of guide you in the right place and lead the teams in those areas.
That's spot on. I think that's such spot on. You can't own all the risk, right? The risk is not yours to own. It's the business's risk, and your job is to help identify it, call it out, put together strategies to mitigate it, inform others, and do the best you can with that information and hope the business makes the best decisions they can.
Exactly.
So no, that's great. And that's great advice. If you could put a message, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask, if you could put a message on a billboard that every new CISO had to read once a day, let's say maybe on their way into the office, what would it say and why?
Probably maybe because it's top of mind, I will go with what we were just talking on. Focus on the risks that support the business. Right? Don't focus on that SEV 10 vulnerability that just hit yesterday, unless that SEV 10 can impact the business.
How will this impact the business? Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good reminder. And most CISOs probably know that, right? But they need reminded of that. I think we all need reminded of that on a regular basis. You kind of have to give yourself permission to like stop, breathe, think,
look up.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Do the quick risk analysis on it. No, that's fantastic.
I find the same with myself. Sometimes you get in the weeds, you're focusing on something, and sometimes it's easy to forget, exactly that. You got to look up and connect to the business.
Yep. Especially when you're engineered to solve problems and you like to tackle issues and, but no, that's fantastic. So in kind of closing here, I'm sure you've worked with and met many, many talented leaders and have had great mentors and teammates over the years. Is there somebody, in that list that you would like to highlight or say thank you to or show gratitude for? Anyone that you would particularly kind of call out that's been helpful to you?
There's probably been several in my career where a lot of big changes for me happened because of these particular people. I would say Admiral Susan Boyer Joyner, Captain Matt Lear, my Navy colleague and also old boss, John McMichael, who was also Captain McMichael in the Navy, but he was my boss in DC as their first CISO. Actually, wow. I grant a lot of where my civilian career has gone based off of my decision. Well, actually, I should say his decision to hire me as a deputy CISO for DC. He is somebody I call a close friend, and I think my civilian career has really taken off because of him and our
Sure.
time together, and then our friendship since then.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Well, we all have a lot of people in our career, our history that have helped provide us with opportunities and maybe gave us feedback that we needed, that maybe didn't think we needed at the time. Um, and those people's support and teamwork along the way, help shape who we are. So,
Oh, actually, I should add one last thing. My current boss has actually been fantastic, and you know him, Vlad Rack.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, Michael, this has been fantastic. We are, near time here. The time flew by, as I thought it might. I really want to, thank you so much. It's been, a tremendous honor to have you come be part of this feature here and talk a little bit about your journey and your path. And um, I don't think we're not often given the opportunity to do something like this and share a little bit of what's helped, kind of form that success. And you've obviously have had tremendous success in your career and have learned a lot along the way. And really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your cyber and leadership journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation. Enjoyed reliving some of my memories, and if it helps anybody out there, all the better.
Amen. That's what it's all about. So thank you again.
Take care.